slopes of 2 equations.
What do we have to do
We'll talk
to-
about 3 equations and what happens there. But we want to look at some situations where we have to write our own equations and solve them. So the solution piece is the same.
Remember we
The
factored?
difference is we have to write equations to start with. So
we're
I
looking
want
for
to
two
find two
numbers
numbers
that
whose sum is
multiply
10
negative 40,
and whose squares differ by 20.
add to positive
First
3.
thing that I'm going to ask on any of these is if you are going to use variables x and y, you need to tell me what they stand for. And this problem, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but on some problems it really will. And if you don't write down what your variables are,
So you might just recognize it's the opposite, otherwise you solve them.
so 1 point always, just for telling me
So we get
what
negative
your
8.
variables are. So in this case, we're just looking for 2 numbers. So x is the first number, and y would be my second.
Okay. So that stuff was pretty recent. Are we okay with that?
Right, so then we go up here,
Let's
and it says
talk
whose
about
sum is 10. What does that
Slope.
mean? The sum.
Alright, so when we're talking about slopes of lines,
That's right.
there's really 4 different
And
options.
whose
If we have a line that's
squares
increasing,
differ by 20. So
the
when I
slope
say
is
slope,
positive.
what are we subtracting?
If our line is decreasing, then our slope is
minus y.
negative.
And we get-
If you have a horizontal line, what's the slope of that?
So now this is like a problem from yesterday.
0.
Mm-hmm.
We just
And
need
if you
to
have a
solve it.
vertical
So is
line?
this one where elimination would be an option?
No slope, it's undefined.
No, my variables are different. We have squares in one and not in the other. So we have to do substitution. So I'm just going to go to the first equation. I want to solve for x. That would be 10 minus y. So then I can sub that in. So I'm replacing my x with 10 minus y squared
Okay.
minus y squared equals 20.
So if I look at problem 24,
How do I do 10
remember
minus
slope
y
is just
squared?
rise over run. So if I ask you for your slope,
There's
we
2
go
of them,
up
so if you
1,
FOIL, you get 100
3, 4.
minus y, negative y times negative y is
We go
positive y
over
squared.
1, 2, 3,
My y
4, 5. So what's our slope?
Lucky for us, positive and negative y squared cancel out.
Rise over run, 4 over 5.
I subtract over my 100. Divide by 20.
Just to jog our memory, all these different things we've crammed into the last 2 years. So you just count from one point to the next. How far up do you have to go? How far over do you have to go?
Does it matter if we like
Boom.
which point we do?
All the
No, if you had started on this one, you would say I go down 4 and backwards 5, and negative 4 divided by negative 5.
tell you
equals
Okay, so if you
5.
get a negative, then
If they're both negative.
okay.
One's positive. If
The
we don't
other thing
have
I'm going
the
to
graph
ask-
to do rise over run, remember
so
we
you
had a
have
slope
to
formula?
Find your variables and
Y2
also work
minus
off
Y1. Over x2 minus x1. On the EOC, you are provided a formula sheet, and this is on there. So you just have to know that it represents slope.
And 6.
No.
Doesn't have to be an amazing sentence, but you do need to answer the question. So we were just asked to find the 2 numbers, that's what they are.
And then, wait a minute. No, yeah, that'd still be the same. Yeah. Because if it's just on the bottom, you still have to do what she said, and it just go up to the top.
So let's try that from 28. So remember, in this point, this is like the x of the first order pair, the y of the first order pair. X of the second order pair, the y of the second order pair. So we do our formula. Y2
In a recent survey, the average number of texts sent by 2
minus y1
24-year-olds and
is
those
negative
55 or over was 2,170.
over x2
However, the number of texts sent by the 18 to
Negative
24-year-olds exceeded the number
minus
sent by the 55
x1
or over
was
by
negative
3,362. Determine how many texts were sent by each
4.
age.
Negative 4 minus 1.
This last question really helps us define our variable. We want to know how many were sent by each, so those
usually put these as a fraction in lowest terms, so that reduces to.
24-year-olds,
One of the third.
y to be the number sent by the 55.
All right. I'm going to do just a little bit more. We're not going to get all the way through this packet today either. We'll finish it tomorrow. But I do want to talk a little bit about the equations of the lines.
Now we have to write our equation.
So
We go back and
equations, the lines, they could be a couple different ways.
send.
Slope intercept is what we're most familiar with, y equals mx plus b.
How do you get an average?
Standard form is when x and y are on the same side.
Right. So if I want the average of these two groups, that means you add them together. add
So
them
problem
together.
32, if I said write the equation
By
of
two.
the line with a slope -1 and a y-intercept of 4. Slope is which variable? M.
Okay.
So
Now
we're
we have
saying
to
my
find
M is
second equation.
-1.
So
The
we
y-intercept
have the
is what
numbers
variable?
18 to 24-year-olds. So that was my X.
Or 4. So M
And
is
C that
slope.
those sent by 55 or over by
B is the y-intercept.
3,362. For that equation.
All right, I'm going to do two final examples. 35.
Add, subtract, multiply, divide.
If I asked you to put this in slope intercept 4.
Well, we're not talking about their averages. That's what this is.
Y equals
If I'm telling you how many.
what x equals
So
Okay,
if
so
you
we
exceeded
need
somebody
to-
by 6. If
So
their
right
score
idea,
was
we have to get the y
5,
by
you
itself.
exceeded them by
So let's
6.
solve.
y is correct.
Okay.
11.
So if I want to
Okay,
do the 4x,
so
we
that
would
means if
subtract
you
it.
subtract 11 minus 5, you get 6, the amount
So
you
we have
exceeded
10y.
by. So this is really the same.
These aren't like terms, so I can just write it as negative 4x minus 10.
24-year-olds
Then what would we have to do
minus
to everything?
55 and over.
Yep,
Yeah.
so divide them by 10. So we get y equals negative 4 over 10 is negative
So we have our
2
two
fifths.
equations.
Negative 10 divided by
Now what
10
do we
is
need to do?
negative 1. So we get y equals negative 2 fifths x minus 1. What is the slope of that?
Substitution or elimination, which route do you want to take?
Negative 2 fifths. What's the y-intercept?
-1.
Negative 1.
Probably solve this one for x.
All right. Last example of the day. X and y intercepts.
My x is 3,300
Remember, that's where it hits the x and y axis.
plus y
So with the x-intercept,
plus my other y.
your y is equal to 0. And then we can solve for the x. Y-intercept, our x is equal to 0. And we'll solve for y. So you basically just make the opposite variable 0. So on 39,
You just want to multiply to the other side.
if I'm trying to find my
So there's
x-intercept,
several
where it
different
hits
options,
the
I think.
x-axis, that means y equals 0 if we're on the x-axis. So if I want to get x by itself,
And if we subtract over
okay,
3,362.
so negative 9 equals negative 3 halves x. And then what would we do?
Okay,
Mhm.
and then we know.
So we're just solving for x. Sorry, I kind of read out space there.
Wait,
So-
to divide, like you have -3/2. So -9 equals -3/2 is not possible.
We're dividing by the negative 3 over 2 to get x by itself. So it's negative 9 divided by negative 3 over 2. And what do we get for that? You can do the negative 3, put the negative 3 over 2 in parentheses if you're plugging it in your calculator.
X was my 18 to 24-year-olds. So
So negative 9 divided by parentheses, and we should get
2,956.
6. So my x-intercept is 6. We hit the x-axis at 6.
55 and over.
If I asked for the ordered pair, the x was 6, the y was 0. We started out putting in 0 for y. If I ask you for the y-intercept, that means x is 0.
Same thing as we have been doing. Some of these will be linear, some of them nonlinear. But the key is at the end, you have to write a sentence.
And so that's the point when x was 0 and y is none. All right.
Is that okay with everyone?
So, today, the first packet we will either turn in at the end of class or beginning tomorrow. So that one's due. I gave you guys 2 more problems on that one, 56 and 58. On today's packet,
A box.
okay, we are going to do
Has a square base and 4 sides and
3,
4 heights.
5, 8,
So we have some
14, 19.
Okay, my base is square. So that means these sides are the same. The height is the same all the way through. All that one. The volume of the box is 54 cubic inches. And the height is double the length of the base. What are the dimensions of the box? So drawing a picture and labeling things, that counts as defining my variables. I can tell what x and y represent here. How do you find volume? So when I say the volume is 54, that means when I multiply all 3 of these, so x times y, so x squared y, we get 54. And again, for that, we're just using the fact that volume is length times width times height. So we multiply those 3 pieces together. I also told you the height, which my height is y, is double the length of the base. What does that mean? 2 times the length. Well, the height y is just twice the base, so y is 2x. Now we have our equations. Substitution or elimination, what's going to be best here? Replace the y with the 2x. Divide by 2. Get rid of the cube, we do the cube rule, and x is 3. Plug that back in to get our y, so y is 2 times 3, or 6. I want my dimensions, so length times width times height. So the box is x is 3, so 3 inches by 3 inches by 6 inches. Or you could say the base is 3 inches long and the height is 6 inches. Questions here? Let's try to do one final problem, and then that'll give you guys plenty of time to work on your own and ask questions. A student invests a total of $5,000 at 3% and 4% annually. After after 1 year, the student receives a total of $187.50 in interest. How much did the student invest at each interest rate? So my question, how much did they invest at each interest rate? That really tells me what my variables are. So X could be the amount at 3%. And Y could be the amount at 4%. If you have a total of $5,000, what's our first equation? Okay, and then I talk about interest. So, if I invest X dollars at 3% interest, we're doing 1 year, we're just doing simple interest, not compound here. So you just take your rate times your principal, so 0.03x. The amount at 4% would be 0.04 y. And how much interest did we have? Okay, now you could do substitution or elimination. So maybe I want to eliminate x. Take this times negative 0.03. X's cancel. Divide by 0.01. And get $3,750. Plug it back in, we know x plus the y is 5,000. So x is 1250. So the student invests $1,250 at 3% and $3,750 at 4%. We actually did problems like this at the beginning of the year when we were doing word problems. We just used tables to set them up. But this is another option, doing it as a system of equations. You guys have questions? We have quite a bit of time left, so there is a handout posted on Google Classroom for you guys to work on and ask questions.